Joining us now on BYU Sports Nation, our third guest in a Go Fast, Go Hard edition of this live show. David Nixon, former BYU linebacker, NFL linebacker as well. David, how are you, my friend?
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
How in the world do you prepare for two quarterbacks with different skill sets?
Well, I think traditionally in the past, maybe last year, it'd be tougher to prepare for two different quarterbacks. But you look at this year, and it's been a long discussion with Chuckie and excuse me, and how he's been struggling with his knee, right? And so I think you almost look at Keaton and Garrettson almost in the same light, and the fact that both of them aren't really runners at this point. They're more pocket guys. I mean, you look at Keaton against Idaho State, he has 74 yards rushing. But then Wake Forest, you saw kind of the knee coming back, he had negative 5 yards rushing. So he's almost become more of a pocket guy, even though traditionally in the past we think of him more of a scrambling, running type quarterback. But because of that knee and the lack of being able to get over the injury, he's almost become a pocket guy like Garrettson. So I think if you're a BYU defense, you really don't have two contrasting different quarterbacks. You kind of almost have the same guy.
And what influence does the O-line have? Because 4 of the 5 starters for Utah State graduated. You returned Kevin Wimpy, who got hurt and got a medical red shirt. And so I think that plays into it too.
Yeah, I think so for sure. And we saw that last year with BYU's offensive line and how, the pressure was able to get to Taysom, and he struggled with his passing efficiency and things like that because of his offensive line. I think you're seeing that this year with Utah State. They've got an offensive line that's been kind of jumbled around. You've got a lot of young guys playing, and it's really caused them troubles. And their offense really hasn't been able to get on track so far this year. And nor do I really think they're going to be able to get on track against BYU this week.
BYU has not had a sack in the last 2 games. They've had 111 passes thrown against them, no quarterback sacks. I think 7 quarterback hurries, but still, you want to get to the QB. Why or why not will that change against Utah State on Friday?
Well, we talked about a little bit about it last week regarding Bronskafusi and the fact that he demands double teams. But talking with some of the defensive guys this week, it really just comes down to being assignment sound, and that's really what they focused on. You can't really go in there and revamp your scheme, right? I mean, the defensive zone blitzes and man blitzes are going to be the same. But we touched on a little bit about it last week too. But when you go with these zone blitzes and man blitzes, it all comes down to being assignment sound. We hear that phrase a lot, and people ask, well, what is that? Well,
what is that, David?
Each guy being in his proper gap. And so if you have 2 outside rushers, and both of them are in what we call the D gap, or the most further outside gap, and both of them are outside that gap, you have a tackle or a tight end that can basically block 2 of them. And the whole blitz goes for nothing, and now you're really short a man in coverage, and so of course you're going to get picked apart. And when I've watched BYU, I think a lot of these young guys are trying to do too much, and they're not really going with what their assignments say. I mean, oftentimes it's tough because when you hear a blitz dialed up, sometimes as a defensive player, you know that you're not going to really get to the quarterback. Your job is to maybe suck in the tackle or suck in the guard and open it up for maybe the blitzing safety or blitzing outside linebacker or inside back, whatever it may be. So certain blitzes are designed to showcase certain players. And I can admit sometimes it's tough because you know that blitz is not really designed for you as a specific player, but you know that you're an integral part of it because if you don't do your job, if you don't draw the tackle outside and open up that gap for the safety to come inside, then the whole blitz goes for nothing, and it's going to be a completed pass because once again you're leaving your secondary and other linebackers out to hang and out to dry. So watching the blitzes, I think a lot of guys realize, look, we're not getting pressure on the quarterback, and so guys start to do kind of their own thing. And once again, talking to defense players this week, the focus was to go back to the basics and make sure that your assignment's down. Every guy is in his proper gap, and when you do that, it's tough to block up these zone blitzes. But once again, if there's one guy outside of his gap, it's easy to block him up.
Unless your name's Justin Timberlake, doing your own thing never works. It just doesn't. So who are the guys, the linebackers, that BYU should try and isolate to actually get to the quarterback, like you mentioned?
Well,
who are the best guys that finish plays?
You obviously go with your playmakers, and we go with Alani Fua. I think Fua's got that big play capability. He's got that knack and that instinct to get to the quarterback. We've seen that in the past, but that's what you get out of a veteran guy who that's what he makes his living off of is rushing the quarterback and then dropping to the flats. And so he's a skilled pass rusher, and I think BYU will continue to focus and try to showcase him. But then I think you really look at this defensive line. You get Remington Peck and Graham Rowley, guys like those, and Bronskafusi that that really aren't maybe big names per se, Remington Peck, for example, but the guy can get to the quarterback, and he's a strong defensive end that can not only give you a quick pass rush move, but also can give you what we call a bull rush move, where you put the tackle right in the lap of the quarterback and put pressure on him that way. So I think you go with the usual playmakers, but I think the defensive ends going forward really need to step up because, once again, some of these blitzes, when you do stunts, which is a movement with the DN and the inside tackle, when you do some stunts, that can free up those guys and allow them to get in and put some pressure on the quarterback too.
Okay, so true or false, BYU will have 2 or more quarterback sacks against Utah State.
Very true.
All right, you like the Cougars to come.
What's a more realistic number?
I'm not going to say some double-digit number. I'm going with I say they get 4 or more.
Double digit
that would be,
number.
that would be
I'm not coming out with a bold prediction today.
Yeah,
but might be foreshadowing something else from somebody else this week.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Named. Does it rhyme with Mayan Mogan?
Something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
David Nixon with us on BYU Sports Nation. This is the only in-state rivalry game this year between 2 Division I programs.
I hate that.
Check that. A featured in-state game, according to Bronco Mendenhall. When BYU's won 23 of the last 25 against Utah State, does this qualify as a rivalry, David?
No, it is not. It doesn't. The opposing team has to win some games in order for it to be a rivalry. With that being said, I mean the last home game against Utah State was a close one, right? And so you have to give Utah State credit to keeping them close and keeping them somewhat competitive. But until Utah State starts winning some of these games, it's kind of a rivalry for them and just another game for BYU. So
and that's been the MO of Utah State, unfortunately. When Utah State doesn't play BYU, I root for Utah State. Utah, on the other hand, I hope they go 0-12 every year. You know what I mean? But Utah State, yeah, they've come close in big games at Auburn, at Wisconsin, at BYU, and all that. It's different. BYU's won a bunch against Utah State. And this year is a little different than last year. I think BYU felt like, hey, there's a chance we could lose this game, but BYU played well. This year, David, Utah State's out of sorts. They just lost to Arkansas State on the road in overtime. Chuckie Keaton's hurt. They don't even know if he's going to play. They're in a weird spot right now.
Yeah, which still kind of puts some pressure on BYU because they're expected to win. Utah State's kind of on a down year, so BYU should go and win this game. So there is some added pressure because it is one of those games that the BYU will be picked heavily to win in. But you got a Utah State team that looks at this game as a rivalry. And so they're going to come in with some added motivation. And so it's one of those games where you definitely can't slip up and you have to prepare for them as you would any other game, which they will. But it really reminds me of the days when we were in the Mountain West. And like I said, we'd go play New Mexico, Wyoming, and it was their Super Bowl to play BYU. And they'd come out with some new packages that we hadn't seen on film. I mean, they were saving these offensive plays and defensive plays for the BYU game that year. And so we always get all sorts of different wrinkles thrown at us. And I wouldn't be surprised this week, especially coming off Arkansas State, where maybe they didn't open up the whole package, and Utah State throw some new wrinkles at BYU that they haven't seen. So you always got to expect the unexpected when you play these type of games, and you play opponents that, once again, this is kind of their Super Bowl, their highlighted, circled game for the year.
Against Wake Forest, 3 different guys threw a touchdown pass for Utah State because they threw a receiver-to-receiver play, and then the backup quarterback came in for Chuckie. So interesting.
David Nixon with us on BYU Sports Nation, former NFL linebacker, BYU TV sports analyst. You can follow him on Twitter at @D_Nixon. David, BYU is in a unique scenario. For the first time since 2008, they're 4-0, hoping to go 5-0. You talked with us the last time you were on BYU Sports Nation about how hard it is to go undefeated and to deal with the pressure. Why does this team have the maturity, not just the talent, but the maturity to run the table?
I think the maturity is there for the players, but to be honest, I think the maturity is there with the coaching staff too. Because a lot of the coaching staff that's here now was part of our 2008 team when we started off 6-0, ranked 9th in the country, and they experienced that loss. And so, we've talked about this. Talking to the players and to the coaches, they literally do have a completely different mindset. I know when we were playing and in that 2008 season, we really had that BCS mentality. Just get to the BCS, and it's exact opposite here. It's literally take it every single game, one game at a time. Now, I'll be honest, in 2008, we didn't really have that mentality. We had that big old BCS kind of looming right there in front of our eyes. We're trying to reach for, and it's kind of the opposite mindset with these guys. They aren't really thinking about the possible BCS playoff. They're not thinking about a New Year's Day bowl game. They're literally taking these games one game at a time. And so I give credit to the coaching staff for kind of instilling that in their minds. But at the same time, you've got players, you've got some veteran players that are great leaders. I mean, because you've got Craig Bills, you've got Bronson Kafusi, those guys that. Bronson's dad was a coach during that 2008 season, so I imagine he's heard lots of stories. And anyways, I think that they've just got a different mindset, a different mentality. And then on top of that, the schedule is favorable in the sense that they have a great chance of winning out from here if they take care of business. And I think starting this week and going forward, they have some great opportunities to go out there and showcase what they can do and hopefully prove to the voters and to everyone else that they deserve to be in some type of talk if they run the table.
Well, no after further review tonight, so take it easy, and then we'll see you Friday, David.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.